The forest was unusually quiet that morning. A thick mist rolled through the pine trees, and the only sounds were the occasional chirp of a bird and the rustling of leaves under the breeze. But something felt off. The animals sensed it, the forest knew it, and so did the two German shepherds moving swiftly through the underbrush. Their ears were up, noses working overtime. These weren't just any dogs. They were trained K9s, brought in by the local search and rescue team after an emergency radio signal had cut out unexpectedly. Something or someone was out there and it wasn't right. Ranger Eli Bennett had always been the kind of man who could disappear into the forest for days and come back with nothing more than a few scratches and a good story. With over 20 years of service, he knew every trail, every shadow, every sound this forest had to offer. So when he didn't report back from his usual patrol, his team was concerned but not panicked. Not at first. But when he missed 2 check-ins, and then his emergency GPS device sent out a short, garbled signal before going completely silent, that's when the alarm bells rang. Officer Dana Walsh, who had worked with Eli for over 5 years, was the first to request the K9 unit. "If anyone can find him they can," she'd said. The unit responded quickly. 2 German shepherds named Axel and Remy, known not just for their tracking skills but for their unshakable loyalty and intelligence. They had found missing hikers, lost children, and once even helped catch a poacher hiding deep in the woods. But this time their mission felt heavier, personal. The team set out early, before the sun had fully risen. Dana walked behind the dogs, holding Eli's jacket in her hands. The dogs sniffed it once, then took off with purpose. The forest seemed to close in around them as they followed, the trees pressing tighter and tighter. The path became steeper, darker. More than once, Dana called out, hoping for an answer, a voice, anything. But there was only silence. Axel suddenly stopped. His body tensed, nose pointed to the air. Remy joined him, whining softly. Dana hurried over, heart racing. The dogs darted off the trail, pushing through dense brush, their movements urgent. Dana followed, branches scratching at her arms, mud pulling at her boots. Then she heard something, a faint clinking sound like metal on metal. It was coming from up ahead. When she finally reached the clearing, her breath caught in her throat. There, slumped against a massive oak tree, was Eli. His uniform was torn, his face bruised and pale. But what made Dana freeze in disbelief wasn't just the sight of him. It was the thick metal chain looped around his waist and secured to the tree like he was some kind of prisoner. His wrists were scraped raw, likely from trying to free himself. His eyes fluttered open, and when he saw Dana, a single tear slipped down his cheek. "Help me!" he croaked, voice barely above a whisper. Before Dana could respond, Axel was already by his side, sniffing him gently, tail low. Remy circled the tree, growling softly, ears pinned back. Something or someone had done this. And it wasn't an accident. Dana dropped to her knees beside Eli, her hands shaking. "Who did this to you?" she asked, voice trembling. But Eli just shook his head, looking toward the thick woods behind them. "They're still out there," he whispered. "They didn't want me to leave." Remy suddenly barked, a deep, warning bark that echoed through the trees. Dana stood up quickly, scanning the woods. But there was nothing. Just shadows and mist. The dogs were on edge now, moving around Eli protectively. Their instincts told them danger was still near. Dana radioed for backup, trying to stay calm, but her hand wouldn't stop shaking. She looked down at Eli, who had closed his eyes again. He was still breathing but fading fast. The chain was too tight to remove without tools, and they didn't have enough time. Remy barked again, louder this time. Axel growled, his eyes fixed on something just beyond the tree-line. Then something moved. It was quick, a blur between the trees. Not an animal. Dana felt the hairs rise on the back of her neck. Someone was watching them. And whoever it was, they didn't want Eli found. She pulled out her flashlight, aiming it at the trees. "Show yourself," she yelled. But nothing answered. Only the wind. Axel lunged toward the movement, But Dana held him back. They couldn't risk splitting up now. Whatever had happened to Eli, it was bigger than anyone thought. He hadn't just gotten lost. He hadn't fallen. Someone had left him here on purpose. Left him to be forgotten. And the scariest part, that someone might still be here. As the K9s stood guard and Dana held her breath, one thing became painfully clear. This was no ordinary rescue mission. This was a warning. And what the dogs did next would change everything. Axel stayed close to Eli, ears perked and eyes locked on the darkness between the trees. Remy paced slowly, sniffing the ground, nose twitching as if trying to read a story written in the soil. Dana kept her back to the tree, one hand gripping the radio and the other reaching for her flashlight again. She swept the beam in wide, slow arcs, hoping for some shape, some face, anything that would explain what was going on. But all she saw was fog, shadows, and the still, heavy forest. She dropped to her knees beside Eli. "You're safe now," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if it was true. His breathing was shallow, skin cold. She unzipped her jacket and draped it over him, trying to keep him warm until backup arrived. But minutes passed, and the radio gave nothing but static. No response. No confirmation. "They're watching," Eli muttered again, barely audible. "They said if I spoke they'd come back." Dana leaned in. Who? Who said that?" Eli's eyes fluttered open, his pupils darting toward the trees. "I found something. I wasn't supposed to. That old cabin off trail. I shouldn't have gone in." Dana froze. "What cabin?" But Eli's eyes closed again. He didn't speak. She turned toward the dogs. Axel was still stiff, growling low. Remy sniffed along the ground a few feet away, then stopped suddenly and barked, short, sharp. Dana rushed over to where he stood. The earth was disturbed. Not much, just enough to notice. She knelt down and brushed the leaves aside. Footprints. Fresh ones. And not just one pair. Two, maybe three. Heavy boots. Moving away from the tree. The trail curved toward the west, deeper into the woods, away from the ranger's usual patrol routes. Remy looked up at her, then back at the prints. It was like he was asking permission. "No," Dana said, heart pounding. "Not yet. We stay here. Until help comes." But help wasn't coming. She tried the radio again, switching channels. Nothing. Not even the emergency signal. Something was interfering with their comms, and she had a gut feeling it wasn't an accident. As she stood there, trying to make sense of what was happening, her thoughts drifted to the last few weeks. Eli had been different, quieter, distracted. She'd asked him about it once, after a long shift. He'd smiled, but there was something forced about it. "Just forest stuff," he'd said. "Sometimes the woods whisper things at night, and it gets under your skin." Dana thought it was just stress. But now, with him chained to a tree, mumbling about warnings and an old cabin, it was clear something had been going on long before today. She looked at the forest. The deeper they went, the less familiar it became. Locals had always talked about strange areas beyond the marked trails. Places where compasses spun uselessly and phones went dead. Some said there were abandoned ranger outposts from the early 1900s, built when the forest was first being mapped. Others claimed those places were cursed, though most folks chalked that up to campfire stories. But what if Eli had found one of those places? Remy suddenly growled low, and Axel barked once, sharp and loud. Dana whipped around. The dogs were staring toward the west trail, muscles tense. She turned her flashlight in that direction, squinting through the fog. Still nothing. Just trees. And a sound. Crunching leaves. Low. Deliberate. Someone or something was moving just out of sight. Dana's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around the flashlight, the cold metal shaking slightly in her hand. "Who's there?" she called out. No answer. She stepped slightly in front of Eli, the dogs flanking her protectively. The steps stopped. Silence again. And then, soft whistle. Just 3 notes. High, low, high. Like a tune you'd hum walking down a road. Remy barked violently and lunged forward, But Dana held him back. The whistle echoed once more, fainter this time. Then footsteps. Running. Fading fast. Whoever it was, they wanted her to know they were there. They wanted to be seen. Just enough. Axel took a few steps forward, but Dana called him back. Her mind was spinning. Why would someone chain a forest ranger to a tree, leave no trace of a struggle, and then watch from a distance without doing anything? Didn't make sense. Unless Eli had gotten too close to something. She looked down at him again. His lips moved like he was dreaming. "Cabin, old maps, not safe," he whispered. Dana sat beside him, trying to piece it together. Old maps. Could he be talking about the forgotten ranger stations? Maybe the ones taken off the grid decades ago. She remembered a story Eli had told her once, on a long hike back to base. He said there were areas in the forest that weren't on any official map anymore. Places the service didn't patrol. Not because of danger, he'd said, but because some doors are better left closed. At the time, she thought it was just one of Eli's forest tales. But now, Remy whined and nudged her hand gently. Dana looked at the dogs. They were ready to move, ready to protect. And she realized something else. These dogs had picked up on Eli's scent, sure. But what if they also picked up on fear? On danger? What if their reaction wasn't just about finding someone, but about sensing something worse? Still, she couldn't leave. Not with Eli like this. She tried the radio again. This time she got a faint crackle. "Nah, do you copy?" Her heart jumped. "Yes. This is Officer Walsh. Found Eli. He's alive but in bad shape. We need immediate evac. He's been chained to a tree." The voice cut back in, distorted. "Repeat. Location, signal broken." Then silence again. No coordinates got through. No way to trace them. Whoever was listening might not have been rescue. Dana set the radio down slowly. The forest was still again. But not quiet. She could feel it. Watching. Waiting. The dogs stiffened once more, eyes tracking the tree line. And Dana knew. The night wasn't over yet. The wind had shifted. It wasn't blowing hard, but it brought with it the unmistakable scent of smoke. Faint, far away, and just enough to catch Dana's attention. She lifted her head slightly, her senses alert. Smoke didn't belong here. Not this deep in the forest. Not without a controlled burn or a campfire permit. And definitely not with a missing ranger chained to a tree and voices hiding in the fog. She glanced back at Eli. His breathing was ragged now, his face pale. Whatever he'd seen, or whoever had done this, had left more than physical damage. He looked haunted, like something was still holding on to him even now. Axel and Remy stayed close, but Dana could see their unease growing. They were brave dogs, trained for danger, but even they were starting to pick up on the unnatural weight in the air. Something wasn't right. Dana had worked in these woods for years. She knew the terrain, the wildlife, even the rhythm of the forest. But this was something different. It wasn't just fear she felt. It was something colder, calculated, like they were being toyed with. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she kept circling around Eli's words. The old cabin. She had never seen it herself, but there had been whispers, mostly from older rangers long since retired. Rumors of places that had been shut down, locked away, left to rot. Places where bad things happened and no one wanted to take responsibility. They called them black spots, areas on the map that got erased. Not just forgotten, removed. And now Eli had found one. Her radio crackled again. She grabbed it quickly, pressing the button. "Hello. This is Officer Dana Walsh. Please respond. I have eyes on the missing ranger. We need medical." The radio cut in sharply. This time it wasn't static, it was a voice. But it wasn't anyone from base. "Stop moving." It was flat, emotionless. Well, unfamiliar. Dana froze. Her finger stayed on the button. "Who is this?" Silence. Then the same voice again. "You weren't supposed to find him." She dropped the radio. Her pulse roared in her ears. Axel and Remy immediately bristled, barking toward the tree line again. Dana pulled Eli's jacket tighter around him and backed up. She scanned the woods, but she couldn't see anything, just the same swirling fog, like it was thickening to hide whatever was out there. Whoever had spoken wasn't just nearby. They were listening, maybe even watching her every move. The smoke scent drifted closer, and suddenly Dana remembered an old fire tower, long abandoned near the western ridge. Rangers used to sleep up there during storm watches. It had been decommissioned years ago, but if someone was using it now, it would explain the smoke. Maybe even explain how Eli ended up here. But the question remained, why? Why chain a man to a tree in the middle of nowhere, with just enough time to be found but not enough to explain anything? As she wrestled with the thought, Axel let out a low growl and took a few steps forward. Remy followed, ears back, tail stiff. Then both dogs turned their heads sharply, alert to something she couldn't hear. A rustling. Not animals. A step. Quiet. Purposeful. Then another sound, low, guttural, almost like a whisper but deeper. It vibrated in her chest more than her ears. Eli stirred suddenly, his body twitching. "No, not again," he mumbled, grabbing Dana's wrist with surprising strength. "Don't let them take me back there." Dana crouched close. Who did this to you?" He shook his head, his eyes wide with something between fear and warning. "They're not rangers. Not anymore." She blinked, unsure if she heard that right. "What do you mean?" He pointed weakly toward the west. "The cabin, it's theirs now." Her heart dropped. Could Eli have stumbled on something criminal? Illegal logging? Hidden camps? She'd heard of things like that happening in protected forests. Operations hidden under the radar, people who didn't want to be found. But this felt bigger, deeper. A loud snap echoed through the trees, like a branch breaking under weight. Dana stood quickly, shining her light, her hand trembling slightly. The beam caught something. Movement, a dark shape slipping behind a tree. Gun. She backed up slowly, the dogs close. Her instincts screamed at her to move, to run, to drag Eli and get out of there. But the reality was they were stuck. She couldn't carry Eli on her own, and the signal was too weak to call in a chopper. And now whoever or whatever was out there had made it clear. They knew she was here. Somewhere not far away, another whistle. Notes. The same eerie tune as before. Dana's breath hitched. The dogs growled again. It was a signal. Game. They weren't just hiding. They were hunting. And she and Eli were the prey. Then suddenly another voice, softer, female, cracked through the radio, almost by accident. "They took Grace too. He found it. Never came back." Dana stared at the radio like it had burned her. Grace. She remembered that name. A seasonal ranger trainee who'd vanished 3 years ago. Everyone thought she'd gotten lost during a solo hike. Search teams combed the area for days. No one found a trace. Not her gear, not her body. Nothing. Until now, everyone thought it was just a tragedy. But what if it wasn't? What if Grace had found the same cabin? What if this forest had secrets that only showed themselves when someone got too close? Dana's hands were shaking now, not from cold, but from the slow realization that she was in the middle of something no one had warned her about. Eli, Grace. And who else? She looked at her dogs. Loyal, focused, still ready. She'd have to rely on them more than ever. Because whatever this was, it wasn't finished. It was only just beginning. The forest had gone quiet again. Too quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves. Not even the distant call of an owl. It was as if everything was holding its breath. Dana could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on her chest. Every second that passed felt longer than the last. Eli was barely conscious now. His lips moved occasionally, murmuring things she couldn't understand. His skin was pale and clammy, and though the chains were off, he wasn't improving. Dana knew he needed help fast, but help was nowhere close. She couldn't risk dragging him without worsening his condition. And she couldn't risk staying either. Axel growled suddenly, low and steady. Remy barked once, sharp and urgent, facing the trail that led deeper into the forest. That trail wasn't marked. It wasn't supposed to be there. But Dana saw it now, just barely, a narrow, overgrown path winding through the trees. It looked like no one had walked it in years, but the dogs sensed something. Then she heard it again, the whistle. 3 notes. High, low, high. Only this time it was closer. Remy bolted forward a few steps, then turned back, whining, almost like he was begging her to follow. Axel stayed with Eli, torn between guarding him and responding to whatever had triggered his instincts. Dana's flashlight flickered, then steadied. The batteries were dying. She whispered to herself, "Just hold on a little longer." Another faint sound came through the trees, metal clinking. Not from her, not from Eli. This was different, rhythmic, like chains swinging. She turned toward the noise, heart pounding. The dogs were alert now, both staring into the thickest part of the woods. And that's when she saw them, 2 small, flickering lights. Like lanterns. They floated between the trees, moving slowly, side by side, too steady to be fireflies. Someone or something was coming. Dana stepped in front of Eli, flashlight aimed, though the beam barely cut through the dark. "Who's there?" she called, her voice shaking. "This is a restricted area. Identify yourself." No answer. Just the lanterns, still moving closer. Then they stopped. A figure stepped into view. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like an old ranger's jacket. The badge was faded. The hat was wrong, too old, almost vintage. Dana felt a chill crawl down her spine. He didn't say a word. He just stood there watching her. Then another figure appeared behind him. A woman also in ranger gear. Younger. Her face was partially hidden in the dark, but Dana caught a glimpse of her name tag. Grace. Dana's breath caught. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Grace, missing for years, standing like nothing had happened. No signs of distress. No confusion. Just silence. Come. Grace. Dana called out, voice soft, almost pleading. "Is that you?" Grace didn't answer. She didn't move. Dana took a small step forward. Axel barked suddenly for standing straight up. Remy growled, and Dana stopped in her tracks. Then Grace smiled. Not a warm smile. Something colder. Unnatural. Dana backed up. The man next to Grace spoke at last. His voice low and steady. "You shouldn't have come here." Dana's hands tightened around the flashlight. Why was Eli chained? "What do you want?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the path Dana had seen earlier. "You want answers. They're down that trail. But once you see, you don't unsee." Dana stared at the path. She could barely make it out, but the dogs were now both facing it, tense and ready. Eli stirred behind her, whispering again. "Don't go. They make you choose." "Choose what?" Dana asked him gently. But Eli just shook his head. She turned back to the figures. They were gone. Just vanished. No sound. No movement. Just the empty trees and the faint smell of smoke again. Dana felt the panic rise in her throat. She didn't know what kind of game was being played here, but it was dangerous and calculated. Whoever these people were, they weren't trying to hide. They were luring her in. And the dogs, they knew it too. But they were still ready to go if she gave the word. She had a decision to make. She could stay with Eli and wait. Risk more time, risk the figures coming back. Or she could follow the trail. Find that cabin. Find the truth. She looked down at Eli. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered. But part of her knew the only way to help him might be to go. She attached a long leash to Remy's vest and whispered, "Track." Remy didn't hesitate. He started toward the trail, Axel right behind. Dana followed, moving slowly, each step harder than the last. The path twisted and narrowed, branches clawing at her jacket, the flashlight flickering more and more. Shadows danced across the trees. Then she saw it, just ahead. A wooden structure, barely standing. The roof sagged, the windows boarded. The old ranger cabin. The one that wasn't supposed to exist. She approached carefully. The dogs stayed close but quiet now, as if they knew how close they were to something big, something bad. She stepped onto the porch. The boards creaked under her weight. Inside something shifted. A chair. Footstep. Dana reached for the door, heart in her throat. It was unlocked. She opened it slowly. And what she saw inside made her forget to breathe. The door creaked wider as Dana stepped inside. Her breath shallow, every sense sharpened. The smell hit her first. Damp wood, old ash, and something metallic. The flashlight struggled to stay alive, its weak beam casting jagged shadows across the broken floorboards and peeling walls. This place hadn't seen a real person in years. Or so she thought. Remy took the lead, stepping lightly, nose to the ground. Axel followed close, ears back, every muscle tense. Dana kept low, scanning the room. Dust danced in the beam of her flashlight, but beneath it, she noticed something strange. No cobwebs in the doorway. No dust on the floor near the far wall. Someone had been here. Recently. There were maps pinned to one wall, the paper brittle and yellowed. One had a red circle drawn in shaky marker, right over a part of the forest that didn't officially exist on her ranger-issued maps. A part that had been closed for safety concerns years ago. Beneath the maps was a table, and on it, an old radio, the kind that only worked on certain forest frequencies. It looked dead at first, but then a single green light blinked. Dana's heart thudded. She leaned in closer. The radio clicked. Then a voice crackled through, soft, scared. "Is anyone out there? Please, they won't let me leave." Dana's eyes widened. The voice wasn't Eli's. It was a woman. Younger. Weak, but clear enough to recognize desperation. "Grace." The radio went silent. Then a second voice cut in. This one low, calm, and chilling. "She knows you're here." The green light blinked once more. Then the entire unit went dark. Dana stepped back, her stomach tightening. She turned to leave, but Remy growled sharply, staring at the far end of the room. A door was half open. Behind it, another space smaller. Maybe a storage room or old sleeping quarters. She pushed it open slowly. The flashlight beam landed on a chair bolted to the floor. Chains hung from the arms. There was dried blood on the wall behind it. Her breath hitched. This wasn't just an old cabin. It was a holding place. Or worse. Before she could process it, something clicked behind her. She spun around. A figure stood in the doorway. But it wasn't one of the ones from the woods. It was someone else. A man in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. Worn face, eyes tired but alert, wearing an old ranger uniform. He looked like someone who belonged here years ago. He raised his hands slightly. "I don't want trouble," he said. "But you shouldn't have come here alone." Dana kept her distance, dogs bristling between them. "Who are you?" "I was a ranger," he said quietly. "Long before all this. Name's Jack." She didn't lower her guard. "What happened here?" He sighed, glancing at the floor. This cabin, it was shut down after something went wrong. Really wrong. There was a rescue gone bad, and a cover-up. The kind that never makes it to the reports. Dana's skin prickled. "What kind of cover-up?" Jack hesitated. "We found something out here. Something that didn't belong. Something we weren't trained to understand. The forest changed. People who went looking for answers didn't come back the same." He motioned to the chains in the back room. They thought they could contain it, control it, but it was never about control. It was about feeding it. Dana felt a cold wave rush over her. "Feeding?" Jack nodded slowly. "Fear, isolation, confusion. It feeds on whatever makes a person question what's real. That's why people vanish. That's why they come back wrong, if they come back at all." Dana thought of Grace. Vili. Of the figures in the fog. They're still out there. Jack's eyes darkened. They're not them anymore. Before she could ask more, the dogs barked, sudden and loud. Dana spun toward the window. Lights in the trees. "Bree." No, 4. Moving fast. Jack's face went pale. You need to get out. Now. Dana shook her head. I'm not leaving, Eli. Jack looked torn. If you go back the way you came, they'll close the path behind you. The forest moves at night. Then what do I do? He paused. There's another way. Through the old logging tunnel. It's risky, but it bypasses the ridge. You might make it. Might. They won't follow you in there. But it's not because they're scared. It's because they don't have to. The lights outside stopped moving. Then one by one they blinked out. Dana grabbed the radio from the table and clipped it to her belt. She looked at Jack. You're coming with me. But he didn't move. I can't. I made my choice a long time ago. Then help me save the people who still can. He looked at her with something like respect, then slowly reached into his jacket and handed her a folded paper. Map. Hand-drawn. Marked with routes, tunnels, symbols she didn't recognize. You have one shot, he said. Don't hesitate. And no matter what you hear in the tunnel, keep going. She nodded, grabbed the map, and turned to leave. Axel and Remy were already at the door, alert, waiting. Outside, the forest was darker than before. Heavier. Every step felt like walking deeper into something ancient and watching. As she reached Eli again, she felt eyes on her. Not from the trees, but from something behind them. Deeper. Buried. She knelt beside him, whispering, We're getting out of here. I promise. His eyes fluttered open for a second. They won't let you. She held onto his hand, steadying her breath. Because ready or not, the final stretch was beginning. And whatever waited at the end of that tunnel, it knew she was coming. The air grew colder as Dana made her way down the hidden path with Eli slumped over her shoulder, Axel and Remy flanking her like silent sentinels. The trees closed in, branches whispering above her head like they were sharing secrets she wasn't meant to hear. Every few steps Eli stirred, mumbling fragments of things she didn't understand. She watches. Behind the wall. Don't answer the voice. Her boots crunched over gravel as she found the opening to the logging tunnel. It was hidden behind a curtain of brush, just like Jack said. Dark, wide enough for a small cart to pass, and smelling of rust and earth. She paused at the entrance, flashlight trembling in her hand. The dogs didn't move. Remy whined softly. Just stay close, Dana whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. She stepped into the tunnel. First there was nothing. Just damp stone and echoes of dripping water. But then came the sounds. Whispers that didn't echo properly, as if they were inside her head. Familiar voices twisted into something unnatural. She heard Jack's voice. Then Grace's, then disturbingly her own. Why are you here, Dana? The tunnel seemed to ask. What are you trying to fix? She kept walking faster now. Eli's weight dragged on her shoulder, but she wouldn't stop. Not here. Not now. The tunnel stretched longer than it should have. She should have reached the other side by now. She checked the map again. Just a little farther. One sharp turn. Then a rise. Then light. But the turn wasn't empty. A figure stood in the middle of the tunnel, backlit by a faint orange glow. It was Grace again. Or at least something wearing Grace's face. Her ranger badge gleamed and her voice was calm. You were never supposed to find him. Dana froze. Why? What happened to you? Grace's eyes were hollow. We tried to contain it. But it only grew stronger. Feeding on our fears. Twisting our thoughts. It chose me next. You can fight it, Dana said, stepping closer. You're not gone. Grace tilted her head. Aren't I? The tunnel shook slightly. Eli moaned, twitching in Dana's arms. The glow behind Grace flared brighter, and now Dana saw it wasn't light. It was fire. A slow-burning wall crawling across the rocks behind her, licking the edges of the tunnel. Then Grace stepped aside. You want out, she said. You'll have to go through. Dana didn't hesitate. Ran. Through the heat, past Grace, through the thick choking air. The dogs barked wildly, charging ahead, and the tunnel seemed to groan as if the forest itself was resisting her escape. Dana held on to Eli with everything she had. Light. Real light. She burst from the tunnel, tumbling out into cold morning air. The trees were thinner here, the forest quiet again. Not dead quiet, just natural. Birds chirped. Leaves rustled. The world had returned. She collapsed beside Eli, panting, clutching his jacket. Axel and Remy stood nearby, eyes still scanning the woods behind them. For a moment, she let herself believe it was over. That's when Jack appeared. He stepped out from between the trees. Calmer, clearer, somehow different. His eyes weren't tired anymore. He looked at peace. "I didn't expect you to make it," he said. Dana stared at him, too tired to speak. "You broke the loop," he said softly. "The forest doesn't like unfinished stories. It needed someone to choose, someone to challenge what it had become. That's what you did." She looked down at Eli, who was now breathing more steadily. His skin had regained some color. The strange fog that lingered around him for days was gone. "What now?" she asked. Jack knelt beside her. "Now, you take him home. And you tell people the truth. Even if they don't believe you. Even if they call you crazy." She looked into his eyes. "Will they come back? Grace, the others?" Jack's smile was bittersweet. "Some part of them always stays. But you brought light into a place that hadn't seen it in a long time. That changes things." Dana nodded, but before she could ask more, Jack began to fade, literally. His form grew lighter, more transparent, until he was nothing more than a shimmer between the trees. Then he was gone. Back to wherever he had been trapped. Dana radioed for help. This time the signal went through. A helicopter was dispatched. Within hours, medics arrived, lifting Eli out on a stretcher. The dogs stayed beside him the whole time, tails wagging weakly, as if they knew their mission was finally complete. But just before Dana boarded the chopper, she took one last look back at the forest. And that's when she saw it. In the shadows between two trees. A glint of metal. An old ranger badge nailed to the bark. Below it, carved into the wood, were the words, "One always stays." She didn't say anything. She just turned away, holding Remy and Axel close, as the chopper lifted them above the trees. Far below, the forest stood still. Watching. Waiting. But this time it had been seen. The flight back over the forest felt unreal. From the sky, everything looked peaceful, just endless green stretching for miles. No one could imagine the fear, the darkness, or the voices that waited under that calm surface. Dana sat beside Eli as the wind from the rotor blades rushed past. His color was better now, his breathing slow and steady. The medic said he would need rest and care, but physically he'd be okay. Still, she wondered what he remembered. If anything. Remy and Axel lay curled at her feet, their eyes finally closing. They had done more than any human could have asked for. Loyal, fearless, and sharp as ever. The way they had responded, guided her and protected Eli. It wasn't just training. It was something deeper. Something born from a bond that no textbook could explain. As the chopper flew farther from the forest, Dana found herself holding Eli's hand tighter, as if part of her was afraid the woods might still reach out and pull them back. Back at base, everything moved fast. Doctors rushed Eli inside. The department launched an official investigation. Dana was questioned for hours, first gently, then more firmly when her story didn't fit the logical timeline. She told them about the cabin, the chains, the tunnel, the voices. About Jack. About Grace. About the radio crackling with a warning before going dead. Some of them nodded politely. Others looked unconvinced. One officer quietly suggested she take some leave time. But the ones who had worked with Eli, the ones who knew he would never go off-grid without reason, they looked at her differently. They didn't say it out loud, but in their eyes she saw it. They believed her. At least enough to start asking their own questions. Over the next few weeks, Eli recovered slowly. He didn't speak about what happened, not right away. He'd look out the window sometimes and go quiet, his eyes drifting toward the tree line even though they were miles from the forest. Dana visited every day, bringing Remy and Axel with her. She talked to him about regular things, work, weather, even joked about how he owed her at least 10 lunches. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip, Eli finally spoke. "I heard her," he said softly. Dana leaned in. "Grace." He nodded. "But not just her. Others. They're still in there. Plus, or held." He didn't go into detail, but Dana didn't push. Some things needed time. She just placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not there anymore. You're safe." He didn't reply, but he closed his eyes with a tired kind of peace. Back at the ranger station, things began to shift. Jack's name, long since marked as retired and nearly forgotten, came up again. His cabin was found just where Dana had said. The inside had been stripped clean, no chains, no maps, no radio. But a faint carving on the inside of the door remained. "Tell the story." Dana did just that. She wrote down everything. Not for a report, not for the department, but for the people who might go into those woods one day and not come out the same. It started as a journal, then became something more. Letter. A warning. Tribute. She didn't dramatize it. She kept it real. Human. Honest. Her story spread, first within ranger circles, then among search and rescue communities. Some dismissed it as just stress or imagination. Others shared their own strange encounters, half-whispered stories they'd never had the courage to speak of until now. And Dana noticed something interesting. No matter how skeptical the person when they heard about the German shepherds, about Remy and Axel finding Eli chained and saving him, there was always a pause, a flicker of emotion, because people trust dogs in a way they don't always trust people. And somewhere deep down they understood. If those dogs reacted, if they led Dana through danger and came out the other side, something real must have happened in that forest. As the seasons changed, Dana went back once, to the edge of the trail where it had all started. She didn't go deep, just far enough to stand in the same place where the dogs had first frozen. The forest was quiet again. Normal. Birds chirped. Squirrels darted. But she could still feel it, the shift in the air. A quiet reminder that some parts of nature are older than memory, and not everything hidden should be found. She looked down at Remy and Axel. They stood calmly now, not tense or alert like before. They sniffed the air, then wagged their tails as if telling her, "It's okay now. We did what we came to do." She turned and walked back. Later that year, Eli retired from active field duty. He didn't leave the ranger service entirely. He stayed on in an advisory role, mostly working with new recruits, helping with safety protocols. He never gave details, but he always ended his talks the same way. Respect the wild. If it feels wrong, it probably is. And never go alone. Dana continued working in the field but started something new as well. A small rescue training program for K-9 units. Not just for police or military, but for forest services, trail guides, even volunteer search groups. She made sure Remy and Axel were part of the training demos. People needed to see what true working dogs could do. Not just with skill but with heart. One afternoon, as she packed up after a session, a little boy came up to her, maybe 7 or 8 years old. He'd watched the whole demonstration wide-eyed. "Did they really find someone in the forest?" he asked, pointing at Remy. Dana smiled. "Yes, they found someone who needed help. And they didn't give up." The boy nodded like he was trying to understand something much bigger than himself. Then he whispered, "Were they scared?" Dana looked at her dogs. "I think they were. But they went anyway. Because that's what brave means." The boy grinned and ran back to his parents. Dana watched him go, the late sunlight turning the field gold. And in that quiet, with the dogs resting beside her, she realized the forest hadn't beaten them. Not really. Had tried, yes. Tested them. Pulled them to the edge of fear. But they had come out of it stronger. Wiser. United. And in the end, it wasn't just the story of what was found in the forest. It was the story of who came back. and who they became because of it.